Today we have approximately 750 soldiers assigned, 95% of which are Republic of Korea or Iraq soldiers. To place your tour in better context, I'll briefly review the political history of the Korean Peninsula. Prior to World War II, the Japanese colonized the Korean Peninsula. In the final days of World War II, the Soviet Union accepted the surrender of the Japanese north of the 38th parallel, while the United States accepted the surrender of the Japanese in the south. The 38th parallel was never meant to be a political boundary nor a division of country. It was merely established to designate areas of responsibility. So in May of 1948, elections were held in the South, and this man, Dr. Sim Man-ri, was elected the first. Their work did begin as scheduled, but after 15 minutes, the North Koreans attacked. The ensuing fight lasted only 4 minutes, but in that time, JSA Company Commander Captain Arthur Boniface and First Platoon Leader First Lieutenant Mark Barrett were brutally axed to death. To give you a better idea of how numbered they were that day, I'll point out some of the JSA soldiers visible here. The first is kind of hard to make out, but here he is fighting off 7 North Korean guards. And here is the helmet of Captain Boniface, who was axed to death in front of his own vehicle. And here you can clearly see a KPA guard wielding an axe at a JSA soldier. This unprovoked act of violence led to a special series of meetings, and it was decided that a national border should separate the two guard forces. Under these new arrangements, there were no more acts of violence until 23 November 1984, when a Soviet citizen on a North Korean-sponsored tour dashed across the border in an attempt to defect to the free world. North Korean guards armed with pistols and rifles quickly followed him in an attempt to kill or capture him. There were approximately 30 North Korean guards here in the northern portion of the sunken garden. The JSA's quick reaction force was immediately alerted and able to halt and outflank the Korean main body here. The ensuing firefight lasted 20 minutes. In that time, the KPA would have 3 men killed and 5 men wounded, while the United Nations Command would have 1 man, Corporal Jean, killed and 1 man wounded. The Soviet citizen was protected throughout the firefight and evacuated back to Camp Boniface. While on tour today, we will see KPA soldiers. The red armbands they wear state that they are military police. Under the armistice, all armed personnel in the DMZ must wear the armband, however the KPA no longer do so. They may come down and see our tour today. We ask that you do not communicate with them in any way, verbally or non-verbally.
Commander UNC. Now the first building I was going to point out here is going to be to your far right over here, these 2 blue buildings. That is the location of our Joint Duty Officer, and this is also known as the JDO building. Our Joint Duty Officer currently right now is a U.S. Army Major, and he's the official representative for the United Nations Command Military Armistice Commission. And he also does official communications between North and South Korea. Now if you look over here to your right front, you should see what appears to be a 2-story tan tower. Now that is KPA guard tower number 2. And as it serves as a guard post for the North Koreans out here in the joint security area, and they're monitoring at this time, so please don't point wherever gesture, ladies and gentlemen.
I think that guy up there.
If you follow the base of the tower down, you should see a series of white stakes that stand 1 meter higher spaced in 10-meter intervals. That represents the border within this area. As you can see, it's further extended out a conference row by a 17 by 5 inch concrete slab bisecting all these buildings. Now the first one I'm going to point out right here is going to be the North Korean Recreation Center. It is ironically named for a house with no recreation equipment at all. And in fact, it's only used by the North Koreans. What they do use the building for, however, is when we have officer level meeting middle finger. Because these childish antics, we've nicknamed that building the Monkey House. The T3 building here is used by our Joint Duty Officer for his colonel level and staff officer level talks. The T2 building is the Military Armistice Commission building, or a MAC building. I'll go more in detail on that building once we visit in a few minutes. Kim Dae-jung was meeting with the former President of the United States, George W. Bush, the exact same time they were shaking hands in Washington, D.C. Our Joint Duty Officer witnessed through the surveillance equipment of this building that 2 North Korean soldiers that walked in here, they grabbed the silk miniature of the United States flag and began to polish their boots with it, and then take the Republic of Korea's flag and begin to blow up their nose with it. Because of this antic, we took out the shelf of the silk miniatures and replaced it with the plastic sign you see here today. And you also notice that the soldiers that you've seen outside or in here are sitting at a modified position of Taekwondo, also known as rock ready. Along with this stance and the sunglasses you see him wearing, presents a very no motion and intimidating stance toward the North Koreans. You also notice that the ones outside were standing half exposed on the buildings. The reason they're doing that is so they can present themselves a little harder target, maintain eyes on North Korea, but at the same time they're to be fired upon, which is guarded 24 hours a day. The big grass here that you see in the middle there by checkpoint 4 was a focal point of the 1976 axe murder incident. Now if you see these other trees right here, this is going to be a big gap in between them. Where you see that big gap is where that yellow poplar tree once stood. And just to give you an idea, it had an approximate, it was 20 meters in height.
Is that feet?
It's
I couldn't even tell you.
checkpoints.
So it's this one. that
Yes.
they were looking through.
Yes, sir. It was
That's
this
why they
checkpoint,
moved this one.
And they could not see that one too well.
I just couldn't. Okay.
And that's the one that was surrounded by three
Okay.
hard
That's why they
posts.
wanted this one to be able to look at. Okay.
Now, if you look over here to your far left, you'll see the North Korean village of Gijondong. Surprisingly, the flag is actually flying kind of decent today. The reason I say is because that flag has a dry weight of 600 pounds.
Wow.
And normally during bad inclement weather, such as like moonstone season, or if it rains really bad, they have to lower that flag, otherwise it'll turn again. If you look against the horizon, you should see what appears to be a jamming tower. Now, that basically the North Koreans put that up there to block off any radio or television signals. It basically keeps their people from the outside world.
It's like way off.
It's way off in the distance on KPA Gower Tower number 7. You can barely see it against the horizon here.
And that was all so they could never tell us. So we tried to cut it down, and they got fucking pissed.
I got rocks.
Rock.